Hey everyone, welcome to the Skill Link podcast, where we get together and talk to content creators, competitive players, and all voices in between who make the Pokemon community incredible. Today, our guest is an expert in a variety of Smogon formats. He's a DPL Draft League champion, also the second champion of the Emerald Open tournament. It's our friend Jeronis. Thanks, man, for coming on.
Yeah, for sure.
Sweet. Yeah, we're pumped to have you on. Appreciate you taking the time to do that. You were just talking right before we hit record that you got some stuff going on this week as well. So
Yep.
Yeah.
So right now in Smogon started doing draft stuff recently. This season, I guess you could call it, with the introduction of Scarlet Violet, and so there's a team draft tour called DCL, Draft Champions League.
Right.
And that's going on week 4. Currently, so you don't play every week, but currently I'm 2-0, so it's been pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't complain about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Sweet. What are you enjoying the most about it so far? A couple matches in.
So it's pretty standard for for draft tours, but I have been playing Ultra Sun and Moon for the tour. There's only one Ultra Sun and Moon slot per week, and this is the first team tour that I mained Ultra Sun Moon, and I mean it's been going pretty well. So yeah,
sweet.
Got to play 2 former one was a former teammate and good friend of mine, and the other guy was just a guy that has in the past completely smashed me in a other Smogon tour, like a OU. I think it was Gen 6 OU or something. And kind of smoked him there. So
Nice. I'm sure that felt good then. Nothing wrong with a good rivalry.
Yeah, it's always fun when you can go back and forth with your rival and get them every once in a while, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It's fun. In our draft league we've been doing, I mean, it's pretty casual, just amongst friends. There's 15 to 20 of us right now. And we've been doing it for 6 or 7 seasons. So whenever I play against Logan, or my brother's in it and Logan's brother's also in it. So when you get one on someone you've played a lot with, it's
it's always nice to get that that win off of someone that you've been eyeing to beat for you take a loss to them the previous season or a different tour, and you're like, I know I can do better, and then you finally do. So
you got to shake that mental hurdle. It's
cool.
The mind games.
That's
sweet.
Josh's brother, I feel like is a major mental hurdle for me. He plays so good. He's crazy. Getting into this a little bit more though. We noticed, like you were saying, earlier on, you're playing a different variety of Smogon formats and things like that. And we were just curious, what are your favorites and what do you think that everyone should try? What do you think that people should get into and just kind of try out for fun?
Yeah, for sure. So I started playing way back in 2013 when I first started playing competitive. And so that was the end of Black and White 2. So I started out in that. I didn't really do many tours, not until a little bit later. I think I did a few tours in Gen 6 for UU and whatnot. But I was a UU main back then for Gen 6. And then Gen 7 came around. I wasn't playing as much because I was out in college, and I just didn't have the time with college, and I was a competitive swimmer as well.
Nice.
And then afterwards, Gen 8 came out, and I graduated, and it was perfect time for me to get back into it. So
nice.
So then I started playing Gen 8, but it wasn't hitting right for me. So then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go back and try these old gens. And so then I really started maining I went back, did a bunch of stuff for Classic and whatnot, and it really opened my eyes to a lot of the lost the forgotten ideas of old formats, and it really opened my eyes to what led me into going into draft, because like you get to use a lot of stuff that you just would never see nowadays just because it's like not strong enough or whatever.
Right.
And so then it led me into like really wanting to explore. And I always liked like lower tiers. So like not just OU. I really liked UU was probably my, like I said, my main. But I also always enjoyed NU, LC. So just having that like little bit extra exploration with the old gens, especially like old gens OU, you see like stuff that would never be viable in like like Charizard, for example. Like Charizard in Gen 5 OU, never. But Gen 3, it's like it's an amazing Pokemon. So stuff like that, it's great.
That's so fun, yeah, dude. The power creep of, I mean, it just naturally happens when they add in new abilities, new gimmicks. Like, of course, you had Megas, Dynamax, Z Crystals, and now Terrestrialization. Stuff just gets left by the wayside.
Yeah,
so
sure.
It's fun to like go back and see mons that used to have like a real niche that they've been kind of passed by, but that's it. So you said it was Gen 8 that specifically kind of had you like, I didn't love that. Was it the Dynamax scene, or was it or was it something in Gen else?
So I started off, I played Dynamax meta. I got Rex for that to like get it banned, and I was like, this is too much. This is definitely too much. But I was missing like I did miss the Megas. I didn't care for Z moves, so like I didn't really care for that being gone. But the Megas were like a big thing for me, especially being that it was like when I first started getting into competitive, like Gen 6 was coming out, Megas were huge, so I was like, this is really cool. But Gen 8, once they got rid of Dynamax and then it became just like heavy duty boots meta, it kind of got really boring, really boring, at least in my opinion. So that's when I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try the old gens. And then I was like, you know what, I'm also, my friends always played draft from when it started, like right after the GBA. A couple of my friends, like they started their own league and all that. But like I never really got into it because back then it was always on cartridge, and I had cartridge, but I just didn't have the time to like, and I didn't have genning, whatever. So just I never got into that side of things. So then I just went. Finally, now everything's going to Smogon or to Showdown for draft because of Gen 8 being really poor on cartridge for draft. So then, that's when I got into it.
That's sweet.
Nice. That's super cool.
And do you have, UU, RU, LC, do you have a favorite Pokemon that comes to mind, or like 2 or 3 that come to mind immediately?
Okay. Gen 6, Suicune in UU was probably my favorite. Probably. But dude, Mega Abomasnow, which sounds like crazy, that thing was so much fun. So much fun to use in that meta, just because like, for example, Suicune was just so good. So like anything that could switch into Suicune and then like major threat in and out, and then like also do big damage to whatever came in. That was those were like those were mainstays for me back then. But then over time, like Jirachi fell down to UU in the later gens, and Jirachi's my favorite Pokemon, so I can't discredit him. So there
you go. That's sweet.
I used Jirachi. I think it was it might have been my Gen, or we did a Gen 5 format, and I like Jirachi a lot. Jirachi's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, I think it was when I first was getting into competitive. I made my like first OU team, and it had a Jirachi on it, and I remember it's so dumb that like this is part of the reason why I probably like Jirachi so much, but I 6-0'd a guy just by clicking Iron Head like 18 times and just constantly flinching.
Serene grace into death.
Ever since then, I was just like, yeah, this thing's cool.
That's so mean.
Which is really scummy, but
I mean, it's in the game, man. No, that's funny. And I want to ask, so with Mega Abomasnow, how did you run? Did you do Swords Dance? Did you mixed attacker? How did you typically...
I mean, it all depended on the team. So like, let's say I needed something. I specifically remember one team that I did have that was double Swords Dance with Feraligatr and Abomasnow, and that was probably one of my favorite teams back then. And then I brought it into current meta. So like that was a team from like 26 or 2015, and then I brought it to a tour much later. I think it was probably 2019 or 2020. Gen 6 OU. It was like or not OU, UU. Probably the UU Classic. No, not Classic. I don't know what it was, but I brought it to that, and it just did not hold up. The meta changed so much because like I think Conk at the time wasn't even in the meta, and like Conk Elder is just so broken
Insane.
in that meta. Yeah,
so strong.
Yeah, really strong.
I do like that you mentioned Omega Bomb of Snow just in general because, I mean, like you said, I think it's a hard mon to use to begin with, but then at the same time, I just love its design. Like it is just such a menace. Like you're like, oh, It looks amazing, and so I like the call out there. I think that's great.
Yeah, I mean, we drafted it on one of my my teams for DCL, but it was never coming. So then we dropped it at mids, which was unfortunate. But that team was really, really not looking too great. So
yeah.
So kind of getting into more of kind of how we found you was through the Emerald Open, tournament Discord server, and I found you in the Hall of Fame there, and I wanted to kind of get and this is kind of a really cool tournament that I saw. It was big. It was a lot of ADV love there, and like you said, kind of going forwards, you realize going backwards might be the way for you, and so I was just kind of curious, how did you get started with the Emerald Open tournament? Like, how did you get introduced to it? And, what has your experience been like in it? And we'll kind of get talking more about, championship stuff in a little bit later, but just kind of like the basics of, the vibes that you liked from it and things like that,
Yeah, for sure. So actually, some might think it's like semi-rigged that I won because I am a mod for the tour, but
okay.
There you go.
Not just a mod, but like the commissioners of the tournament are two of my best friends from Pokemon, like Keegan and Kaz. I've known Kaz since 2013, like when I first started, and Keegan, he was also like he's been in the same like group chat that started out on Skype back then. So I think he joined maybe like January of 2014, so like right after it really started. So like they were the ones who like got the whole thing together. Like Kaz was also the one that was like, hey, you want to try draft again? And like I was like, you know what, I'll try it. But this was back before Emerald Open was a thing. So yeah, they kind of like were like, hey, we really like ADV, and I always knew that they did, and we want to make a draft format for it because it's never had a draft format, right? Or like a widespread one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's been like little tours or leagues here and there that like people tried, but like there you would always look at the boards, and there was always like some pretty glaring issues.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been really refining it since our first start, because our first board and even the board that I won off of, there were a lot of issues. But yeah, I always enjoy, or I started to enjoy ADV a little bit before we started this, and then the biggest thing is I was like maining draft, and then finally an ADV thing was going to come through with it, and I was like, this is going to be perfect for me. So the first year, I did pretty well. I think I got to top 32, but then lost to one of my former DPL teammates, Toxic, and he's just a solid player, and I just didn't play that well. I would say he just outplayed. But then season 2, I looked at the board and I was like, there's some things that like if I get it might just like carry me, and the biggest one being Raikou. Raikou, it was like from the first season of the tour, I looked at the win rate and I was like, this thing has like it was probably like 25% win rate up until, or 25 or more % win rate up until the final 4, and I think it got knocked out in the final 4. And I was like, that's pretty interesting for like a mon that's like, usually written off in ADV because it's like fully walled by like Blissey and Swampert for the most part. Because if it's not walled by Swampert, then it's walled by the dragons, because then you're running HP grass instead of
HP ice.
Yeah, ice. So I looked at it and I was like, well, not everyone's gonna have a Blissey. Not everyone's gonna have a Doug Trio. That's another one that's a big thing. And if I just prep around those mons when I do have it, like, who cares? So then before the tour, we were adjusting the board, and I was like, hey, we should raise Raikou. And like Kaz was like, yeah, sure, that makes sense. I mean, it had a pretty good win rate last season. I'm like, yeah, probably a couple points, but I don't know how much. And he's like, you know what, we'll just raise it one, because we had it down at 14 for the first one. And
wow.
yeah, really cheap. Like nowadays it's 18. It's the max.
Yeah.
But yeah, we bumped it up to 15, and then I was, I think, third in my draft pool, and we had just introduced T-Tar because the first tour we didn't have T-Tar because we thought it would be a little bit too much with Perm Sam. It wasn't. T-Tar is actually just meh, because it really determines the exact build that you're going to need to do, because you don't want to be hurting yourself so much with T-Tar, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, we shifted it up, but then after I first got Metagross pick 3, I think, and then it went back to me, and both Dragonite and Raikou were available, and I was like, Dragonite's kind of broken because it has 600 BST, and you can have it do anything, even though it's like not good in the actual like OU. It's good in draft because you can look at what your opponent has. Same thing with Raikou. Look at what your opponent has and just build around that.
Yeah.
So I was like, I want both of these mons. I really hope that I can get both. And luckily enough, the other players, because the one had T-Tar, he was drafting just around that. I didn't have to worry about him drafting over what I wanted, and the other player just didn't get what like either one of those two. So I got both of them. And I mean, Metagross is just great mon. I thought that thing was also undervalued because it was 17. Now that thing's also 18. Just because Meteor Mash, once you get one of those attack raises, it's insane.
Yeah.
And it still has like that base 95, is it? Special attack?
I think so.
And with that, you can snipe off things like Wheezing, for example. I just went back and watched a replay, and I had like a fully physical Metagross, but I just threw Psychic on it. It easily 2-shot Wheezing.
Take care of it, yeah.
Just one hit into a Wheezing did like 80%. It's like, okay, yeah, something that like you would think walls. No, not even close.
That's crazy.
I think I remember watching a replay with Metagross too, where it could even take on Swampert fairly well, where you gave it HP Grass or something like that, and it can, because of its massive defensive stat, it could play ball.
Oh yeah, it lives any Earthquake from literally any mon, which it shouldn't, but it does. Like like Bandit, Doug Trio does nothing to it. Like, I mean, it does a lot, but it knocks it down to like 20%. Like
you still
why
live.
is it living with that much?
Yeah.
This is Bandit.
That's crazy. Yeah, and Logan, I want to jump this question a little bit just because we're talking about it now. But as far as your team building goes, of course you had the Metagross, you had your Raikou, Dragonite, then you have Blastoise, Flygon, Scizor, Shiftry, and Delcatty. Obviously we're talking about Metagross frequently seen as like this S tier mon because it like you said, it requires your opponents to have an answer for it, and even if it does, you still do a pretty good job against.
And you can always
checks.
boom. You can always boom.
Yeah, you can explode too. That's the thing. So like even if they have checks, you just explode and you're mostly fine. And then so how did you choose what you did from matchup to match? I guess kind of give us a team analysis on the rest of your team.
So with the biggest thing for me, a lot of times with draft is just versatility with every single mon, at least as many as the mons as possible. So Dragonite can be physical or special. Same with Metagross. Raikou can be either like a setup Raikou or like a toxic stalling Raikou. I mean, it's fast. It like, especially for ADV standards, it's super fast. So you can just sub-toxic stall things like very easily. And then Blastoise, it doesn't seem like it. You would think, oh, it's just like a defensive spinner, but the amount of times that I brought like Salic Berry or whatever just to like Salic Torrent Blastoise, that does a lot of damage.
Oh,
like
if you land a Hydro Pump or something,
yeah, for sure. And then like you can always I brought a Mirror Coat a couple times just to like Gengar will do like 40% with Thunderbolt or so to like a more Spadef one, and you Mirror Coat, it's dead, like just like that. So I love Blastoise for that. And it's just one of the best spinners in the tier. Like
right.
And it was like 9. It was like 9 points, right? So it's kind of a steal. Like
I think 10.
Okay,
something like that.
It was lower though, yeah.
Yeah, not crazy high. Not like a Starmie is known as like the best spinner because of its speed, which makes sense, and just access to recover. But yeah, Blastoise is totally fine if you can't get it. Then what else did I have on that team? Oh, I always wanted, because we allowed Baton Pass, I wanted a good Baton Pass user, and a good Steel type. So Scizor worked out with that. Granted, I really didn't use it for that. I think I might have used it for that in 1 or 2 games total throughout the whole run, but or at least tried to. Sometimes it didn't even see the light of day. And then Flagon was just like a pick that it once again is like versatile by like being able to both be a defensive mon just because of typing alone, and then like Bandit EQ whatever can do good damage, and it just has it has that good typing. I did have to watch out for ice types, being that I had both D-Knight and Flagon.
Yeah, good point. Yeah,
but with like a really strong water in Blastoise and a solid Steel and Sizz, I didn't have to worry too much. And there's not as many good ice types like throwing off ice beams. Yeah, there's a lot of ice beams in the tier with like Starmie, Tentacruel, let's say, but they're not that strong. Like base 100 ice beam, D-Knight usually can live, and like Dragon Dance once so that it OHKOs back or whatever it needs to do. So yeah, that's and then awesome. Delcatty was on the team.
Who's there?
He came to one game.
On my team.
He came to one game.
You gotta fake off.
And then I think it got like a wish and maybe even a heal bell off in that game.
Ooh,
I can't remember.
Something.
Yeah, it was big. It was big. And then Shift Tree actually came to quite a few games. That thing was very undervalued, being that it has access to like Thief, which sounds like a weird move to have. It's like a selling point, but back then Thief was really good, being that you completely destroy like some mon's only recovery option, like getting rid of leftovers and then you taking them and benefiting from them. That's great.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And then it also just has the chlorophyll if you ever want to just throw off like
Sunny Day somewhere.
Sunny Day,
yeah.
Sunny Day, Solar Beam. Even on that set, if you know that Sun's running out, you have Explosion as your last move. Boom, you get another kill because Explosion's broken in the old gens. Yeah. It's just, I mean, the team was really good, like really good for the format, and I mean, almost every single mon on that team rose up in points. At least all the main ones. So Metagross rose up a point. Raikou rose up 3 points.
You single-handedly warped the league, man.
The economy, man.
D-Knight went up another point.
That's incredible.
Causing a draft league recession, man.
Yeah, dude, even Shift Tree, I think, went up from 5 points to 8 points, I think it's sitting at now.
That's so awesome.
So
that's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. But before Logan asks you about, you had your perfect record and everything, you guys do the point-based draft for those listening, which is really cool. Because so in our league that we've done with people is we, how we make our teams is we don't necessarily do like OU or anything. We'll just say on every team you get 2 Ubers on your roster. You
Okay.
get 3 OU, 3 UU, and then 3 RUNU. And then for any given match, like you have like a 10-man roster. And then for your 6 mons, you can only have 1 Uber. You can have 2 OU in your party, 2 UU, or sorry, 2 UU and then 1 RUNU. So
That's really
when we
interesting.
draft, it's super fun. So when you draft, we have like our big pool and they're separated by tiers and whatever. So, you basically have to strategize on like, hey, do I want to target an Uber with my first overall pick? Or do I want to snag like 2 really good OUs off the bat and then kind of strategize from there? So this point-based thing is pretty cool because we hadn't seen anything like that before. And you're kind of delving a little bit into how you strategize to, you're like, hey, I hope I can get Metagross and Raikou, and it worked out for you. Like, how did you go about that?
Looking at like positioning of where you're drafting is like huge. That's something that like I always sometimes overanalyze, and then it like messes me up. Like one time that I was like, oh, I really want to get a Galar Slowking, but if I don't pick it now and it was like first pick, I'm not gonna get it. And I'm like,
right,
it really like messed up my team, screwed over because that was a team tour and kind of screwed over one of our teams, which is unfortunate. But if you really analyze, like, okay, like I said, this guy that was first pick got T-Tar. He's just gonna go for sand immune mons, like at least for his strong mons. So he's probably gonna get a ground type and a steel type on the wheel coming back. So I looked at that and I was like, okay, as long as the 2 mons that I want aren't of those typings, then I probably don't have to worry. And so like that's a big way of like analyzing the board. And nowadays I think just about all drafts, because it started out more like the way that you guys do it, where like it's tier based.
Yeah.
But more and more tours and leagues have been switching over to the points, and at this point it's more of the standard. Like once Smogon released their stuff, it's always been points, all that. DPL has been points for since that started, and that started way back. Even like Joey's league, Joey and Shuckle King's league, that's points based, whereas like WBE used to be tier based.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty much just the standard now, and 18 points is oftentimes the max, but some you can see like delve all the way up to like 20 points or so. And it really is dependent on like how your league values those mons,
right?
Because like, yeah, you can set it to like the OU or however you guys set it, but the problem is a Pokemon's tier doesn't, at least in the singles formats, does not translate to draft. So you got something like Necrozma. Necrozma is an amazing draft mon. Like on most draft boards for the formats that it's allowed in, so Gen 7, Gen 8, on the most boards, it's like 16, 17 points, somewhere in that range, or 16, 15 points probably. Whereas you look at its placement on the tier list for Gen 8, it was RU, I think. So like, how do you quantify like this mon is so good in draft, but it's like whatever because there's just better other psychics or whatever maybe in OU that like that outclass it, so it will never have that usage. But in draft, you can. It's one of those most versatile mons because it's so bulky, it's so strong, it has all the setup options that you need. So like, yeah, I feel like the way that draft has been going with the points and all that, it makes more sense to most players at least. But to be just based off of tiers, it makes sense because like a lot of players don't look at mons like that.
Right.
Yeah. This is I guess a question, kind of a clarification from my understanding. So, because there's multiple draft like pools that you guys were in, does that mean that you guys, that each draft pool had access to the same pool of mons. So like for example, in each like of the 4 pools, one person could draft Tyranitar, for example. Is that kind of how I'm understanding how it works?
Okay, so for draft tours, right? For draft tournament, like a single player tournament, not a team tour, just a single player.
Mm-hmm.
You usually have X amount of boards. Okay, let's say with Emerald Open we had, what was it? 250 or 128?
128 for, I think, for your season.
128. Okay. We had 128 players. And so you have to evenly divide that into groupings, and you need to make it the most balanced as possible. We did groups of 8, and so there were 8 different draft boards, or not 8. Sorry, I can't do math in my head right now. Double that. 16 different draft boards.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had 16 different draft boards. And with that, each player can only draft from their own board, and that's it.
Okay,
that's cool.
Yeah. So like you'll see 8 different T-Tars, but only one player per board has that T-Tar. And then those draft boards, like the people that you go up against in your pools, your battle pools, are not going to be necessarily the same people that were in. So you might be right off the bat going up against 2 other Raikus already in your pool.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah,
that makes sense. I think I can also see kind of why the point system is also probably advancing in that way as well, because with so many in some of these bigger pools and things like that, sometimes you don't have enough Pokemon to really go around, at least good Pokemon, right? So that totally makes sense too.
Yeah. So like you'll have like these mons that are like 18 points, and then you'll look at other mons that are like 12 points. Those 12-point mons are still OU, but like it's not worth it to get them compared to getting one of these 18 guys, just because they're way more like versatile or whatever it might be. Not to say that 12-point mon's not good. It's just that in draft specifically, it's outclassed.
That makes sense.
That makes sense. That totally makes sense. And so kind of like, I mean, this is really cool, really interesting, just because it's kind of different from how we've done it, you know, and kind of getting into the, like, again, kind of back into the analysis side of it. I mean, with your masterful kind of like economy usage of your points, you were able to get a good team, and you actually got a perfect record from what it says on the Hall of Fame and stuff there. So, I mean, kind of talk to us kind of how you like went about like your, not necessarily like your, like just your team planning, but how you analyze the battles ahead and kind of accomplished that. And then obviously, I mean, there's got to be a little bit of pressure there. So like, kind of talk about that perfect record. So
I felt like just with my team alone. Sorry, my cat's like.
Oh, you're good.
Running around right now.
I got one too. And the other day, she climbed on me as we were talking to someone too, and I was like, "Seriously, right now, you got to do this?"
But yeah, so with draft planning, like prepping for battles, I kind of just look at, first thing I look at is speed tiers, seeing like, okay, this is their fastest mon. I don't need to outspeed anything faster than that. You know, yes, some things might be scarfed. Well, Gen 3 didn't exist, so I didn't have to worry as much about that. But I did have to account for Salic berries on like the common mons that would run like Endure, like Blaziken, for example. So like I have to make sure my my agility Metagross at +2 speed still outspeeds a +1 max speed Blaziken. Right? Very simple example, but yeah, that you got to account for stuff like that in the builder. But then the second thing I look at is looking at the amount of weaknesses their team has to like certain typings. So other Emerald Open champion Zugu Royale, I looked at his team. I had to play him, I think it was round 1 or 2 of bracket. And so it was like, oh shoot, I gotta beat the champion. I've known him forever at this point. teamed with him for a Smogon tour back in the day. And then, so like, I knew he was a good player. Obviously, he won the first one. And I looked at his team, though, and I saw 0 flying resist. And I'm like, okay, well, Dragonite's just going to get a Dragon Dance and just click HP flying just over and over and over again if I can. And so, shoot, my cat's gone crazy.
You're good.
You're good.
He likes those strats, man.
Yeah. So then, so yeah, I just like was like, okay, as long as I can set up my Dragonite, make sure that it doesn't get like paralyzed or whatever, and or doesn't get roared out or whatever it may be. Because if you go and look at the replay of that game, I actually brought just mono HP flying on Dragonite. Like that was the only attacking move, but I had Dragon Dance. I forget one of the moves, but I know I also had Roar, which like sounds like really weird, but his only way of phasing me out was to use Whirlwind with Snorlax.
Oh,
and
interesting.
Knowing that he could only use that, I would have a faster Roar than him whirlwinding me out. So it actually came into play where he tried whirlwinding me after I got 1 or 2 Dragon Dances, and I just roared him before that happened, and then I just swept him from there.
That's insane.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's great.
Cool.
Yeah, so those are like 2 of the main things. So speed tiers and then weaknesses, and then just like looking at their overall build. Like, let's say you see a bunch of bulky mons, you're like, okay, I have to bring these stall breakers. Like, I need to bring taunt, whatever, just to make sure that I don't lose to these strats that, I mean, are preppable but can be annoying, right?
They can get out of hand if you're not ready for them.
Exactly.
I like that you also kind of looked into the deeper moveset too, because a lot of people forget Snorlax gets Whirlwind, and so.
Oh yeah, I mean, I feel like I just with being so like versed in all of the formats at this point, I've looked at every single mon.
Yeah.
For the most part, like I didn't know that what's it called? Wishcash had Spark until I saw Zugu using that in a different team tour. I was like, okay, well, that's something new.
Store that away for later.
Yeah. But like stuff like that, like I know my brain has, for no reason, stored way too much information about every single mon that's like, at least every single mon that's relevant, and even a lot of the irrelevant ones. Just what they do and how they can function.
That's awesome.
Also, there's just like a lot of patterns that arise, and you'll see that if you get really into it. Yeah. But yeah, it's a really in-depth game, and if you have the brain capacity to just put it all in there, you can do some cool stuff.
That's sweet. Yeah, we were talking to this guy named Audie the other night. He's like a VGC guy. He's qualified at Worlds and everything. Really, really good. And yeah, same kind of thing. He's like, if you want to get good, you just got to play like you just got to play matches and watch matches and just like, because you get to a point where you can like go against someone, and even if you've never played them and don't know how they play, like you can probably have a generally good idea of what they're going to bring out. And it's just so much information, because there's abilities, there's natures and EVs, there's of course the moves, the base power of the moves, the secondary effects of the moves, base stat total. I mean, it's just crazy how much there is that you got to take into account. And that's insane.
Yeah, I mean, Pokemon's a very in-depth game. Like,
it is.
Yeah. But last thing about that, the pressure. So I've been in a lot of situations where I've made it to finals, especially for draft.
Sweet.
And I mean, having that previous experience has really benefited me, but also just being that I was like a competitive swimmer, which
helps a lot.
Like handling nerves with that really like helps with handling nerves in really any competitive endeavor. So
I agree with that for sure.
Yeah.
Very cool. That's awesome. Yeah, kind of like bringing in the real life and all that together. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
Last question before we go into our rapid fire round. You've participated in a number of seasons in the Emerald Open, and also, I mean, we've talked about the other draft formats that you've competed in and stuff like that. And I would guess, kind of like one of the interesting things is, we're seeing kind of this ADV revival a lot of times right now, and it's kind of being pioneered, continued to be improved upon, and stuff like that. So, in the Emerald Open, and even in just kind of different formats and things like that, like kind of what trends and what innovations have you kind of seen come into fruition from your experience, and like anything that you think you like want to shout out, or anything cool?
Yeah. So especially in draft, um, also a very relevant thing. Just come for all of ADV. I think Quick Claw should be banned.
Okay.
Zugu is one of the most known offenders of using it way too much. That item is super good in Gen 3, especially because it doesn't even mention that it activated.
It just does it.
Oh yeah.
So it just happens. So let's say you have a mon that could be outsped, but you don't know their speed stat, like how much they actually invest it, and it could activate and you just don't know. And then you go into something else that you expect is like bulky enough, or like let's say you have something that's modest running a Quick Claw.
Mm-hmm.
It outspeeds something that it needs to be timid to outspeed.
Yeah.
Then you go into your other mon that you're like, okay, well, this thing has to be timid because I got outsped. I'm gonna live this hit. It hits you again.
Modest.
It's modest.
Yeah,
you die. You're like,
oh,
wait
no.
a second,
Wait,
what just happened? So yeah. Quick Claw, I mean, it has since been banned. We do not allow that anymore, and a lot of like the ADV revival tournament that Jim and Kara are running.
Yeah,
that one also has it banned. So a lot of the Gen 3 stuff has been moving towards that, especially also with like just accuracy dropping moves, all that stuff.
Obviously,
so that's fair. But like really things that have been changing in the meta, I think a lot of things are things specifically like from my draft. Let's say Dragonite was known as just like a whatever mon the first season, and then season 2 it really I think I showed that it's really a useful mon. Raikou was very obvious. I mean, out of the top 4, I think 3 of the teams had it at the end of that season, so it's like, okay, this mon's good. This mon's really good. But yeah, it's just like finding these mons that like are seemingly like bad in OU, and then just bringing them to greatness in a format where you know what your opponent's bringing.
Yeah.
Whereas like the biggest thing with Dragonite is in OU, you don't know what moves that you want to bring. You don't know if you want to bring Focus Punch. You don't know if you want to bring Thunder, because like you want to hit everything that's relevant in the meta, and you just can't. You just can't with Dragonite. You can't run like Dragon Dance while still taking on Salamence and Blissey, and like it's just too much. But when you don't have to worry about that, what
what's holding you back?
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, other than that, for ADV revival stuff, I just love that it's coming back. I mean,
cool.
It's not that it's coming back. It's bigger than it's ever been. ADV, OU, ADV, everything is way bigger than it was even back when ADV was the gen.
Yeah.
Because I mean, there was no accessibility compared to nowadays. Like Showdown wasn't a thing back then. They had I don't even know what the simulator was, because it was before Shoddy. Shoddy was Gen 4, I think.
Yeah.
But whatever was before that, it's just, I mean, it's ancient times now. They didn't have their replays were just logs. Like it's crazy to go back into the history and looking at stuff. But they also had a lot of things that didn't seem broken or didn't seem really good back then, or things that did seem too good. Like for whatever reason, they had like Haunter and whatnot always in UUBL because they were like, oh, it's just a mini Gengar. No, this thing isn't that good. It should be allowed in UU. Like, yeah, it's a solid thing, but like, why is this not allowed in UU, right?
Yeah.
So
That's funny.
I feel like a lot of those new, not just discoveries, but like questioning why is this allowed or why this isn't allowed is really good into like growing this meta that's been around since 2003, right?
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Well, especially since it sounds like you guys are like, I mean, at least the Emerald Open tournament is adjusting those things according to results of and data that they get from previous seasons, stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So not only do we take it from the Emerald Open, Kaz also runs a little tour on his own. That's like, it's kind of private, where a lot of the top players from Emerald Open are playing in it. So
Cool.
like myself, Zugu, Kaz actually doesn't, you might not see that he has results, but he's, I think, been top 8 and top 16 in two separate Emerald Opens. And just a couple other guys. There's 16 of us, and we play 1 week ADV, 1 week Gen 6.
Cool.
Back and forth.
Nice.
So we get to, it's called the Hoenn Classic. So it's pretty fun. But yeah, we take results from that as well and take that data and see like, okay, this is still too good, for example, or this thing like T-Tar, for example, we had at 19 in the first Emerald Open that we allowed it. And then we're like, yeah, this thing isn't that good. So then we tried it at 18 in the other tour or the other league. And then we're like, this still isn't that good. So then we brought it down to like, I think it's sitting at 17 at this point because like just seeing how it actually, Zurin is another example. Sorry. He's one of the best. He's won the most leagues for ADV so far.
Cool.
But he hasn't won an Emerald Open yet. I don't know if he even participated in the last one, but yeah, and it's also just cool to see just a little shout out to the other winners of ADV or of Emerald Open, because like Zugo I've known forever, or not forever, but since like 2019 or so. He was a former teammate of mine, and then Lambo, also former teammate of mine.
Nice.
And yeah, it's just cool to see that like it's me and my bros that are on the top.
You're the kings.
That's so sweet.
I love it.
It's awesome, man. Well, sweet. Yeah, no, we definitely appreciate the insight and all that. This definitely fascinated us. I know, Gen 3 is, I mean, kind of like with you, it's always been one of my favorites, and it's like just a comfort gen to fall back on, an older format. So it was really cool to learn more about that. And now we for our rapid fire round, just kind of basically quick off the hip, off the top of the dome answers that come to mind. And for you, we wanted to go ahead and list 2 Pokemon that are in the same point tier. And then you just tell us like gut reaction in a vacuum. So like regardless of the rest of your team context, you don't know who you're playing. Like just who would you pick between the two? So I got 4 for you. First one, Skarmory or Zapdos?
Zapdos.
Okay, dang, that was quick.
So I like Skarm, and I've tried it, but it's just Zapdos just has a little. Lambo brought Zapdos to the point where it finally won. Okay. Whereas like it's always been seen as like not as good as it is in OU, but no, it still can do a lot, especially like with agility pass, baton or sub pass, stuff like that. And then it's just obviously it's still Zapdos. It's bulky. It can
good special
take
attack
hits,
and everything.
And it has really high special attack. So,
exactly.
Whereas Skarm has one thing going for it: spikes. Yes, it's the best spikers user, hands down, best
it does
spikes
the one
user.
Thing.
But what else does it have?
Right.
Some people will highly disagree with me. Like Kaz says, Skarm's the best mon in the tier, but I don't know. It seems too one-dimensional for me.
For sure, that makes sense. All right, next one, Regice or Umbreon?
Regice, 100%.
Okay.
Umbreon is just a little bit too passive. It doesn't have the damage output, whereas Regice, it's one of the strongest ice beamers in the entire tier.
That sounds
Just
right.
being that it is ice type, and it
on top of
coming
a
off
special wall.
Yeah, and then it has that other side of it where it's just a really strong, like can take a hit from any special mon, and even go on.
I was gonna say it can also go boom, toxic stall.
Oh yeah, that's what I was about to say. Yeah, it always can click that boom button. Anything with that boom button gets like a +2 points from me because that move is just it's unbelievable and all gens.
Sure. Well, speaking of that, for the next one, I got Regirock and Registeel.
Steel. Steel is just a better typing.
I was gonna say for the typing, right?
Yeah, simple. On our newer boards, Registeel is, I think, a point higher, and so is Regice. Might be actually 2 points higher than both of them now.
Oh, okay.
I could, or maybe Steel and Ice are in the same tier. I can't remember. You have to look at the. Actually, no, it would be on the other draft board that isn't in there yet. So
cool,
nice. All right, and then last one, I got another lower point tier mons, both Intimidators, Arcanine or Tauros.
Tauros.
Mm-hmm.
I think the speed is too significant, and the fact that Taurus's stab options are physical,
right?
Whereas Arcanine, yes, it has that extreme speed, which is so nice to have in its kit. But it's just double edge coming off of that normal,
stab.
base 100 attack. It's too strong for the meta.
Breaker,
Like you would think that that's not that strong, but back then, Gen 3, that's strong. That's some strong hits.
Yeah.
Like CBB played in our other league, and he had a Tauros, and he was killing everyone's team with that thing, and you would never expect it, but it was coming in and just taking like 2 to 3 kills a game easily.
I'm pretty sure Lambo had it on his team for this last victory.
Yeah,
right?
that sounds about right. Yeah. that thing, it's good. It's so good.
It's good, yeah. Well, it's got sneaky good defense too. It isn't like 90, 95 defense.
Yeah, and then 75 special
HP.
defense. So, HP.
It's 70 SPDF and then 75 HP. Yeah,
70.
Yeah. But like decent bulk, honestly, on top of the 100 plus attack
and then
speed and intimidate.
Yeah.
There you
go. Great mod.
Yeah, nice. Well, that's what I have for the rapid fire. Logan, want to take us into some shower thoughts?
Yeah, so we're going to go into shower thoughts. These, again, are just basically, just some fun questions that we have about life, the Pokemon world, things of that nature that we just like to, throw your way, see what, you think. And then, obviously, there were a couple that we'll throw back to you, too, if you brought up some at the beginning of our conversation, before the call. And if you want to get into them, we definitely can. The first one that we have is going to be, if you can create a new move, you can decide the generation, you can decide what it does, what type it is, and then what mons have access to
it. Can I just modify an existing move?
Yeah, dude, definitely.
100%.
Okay, so we all know that Explosion is broken in Gen 4 doubles. That's why it got its power nerf. It was because things like Metagross in Gen 4 doubles VGC was way too strong.
Mm-hmm.
How about, because it's still a base 250 power move in both games, how about, because you're a single target, let's just give it back that old power in the new gens for like singles, but in doubles it still has only 250.
Okay,
whereas
that makes sense.
It has the 500. Yeah, like why not? I mean,
It's easy to do.
Yeah,
like yeah, that makes sense. I totally like that. I like that a lot. That's awesome.
It's just my favorite move of the old gens. I just played a Gen 4 draft tour, or it was a team tour, but I was playing Gen 4 for it. And I had Electrode on one of my teams, and like it's just such a good click because like even coming off of that like low base attack, you can still kill things. And then you get a free switch in after, right? So yeah, it's explosion, changing it semi back to what it used to be, and then also buffing Misty Explosion, because why is that thing? Why is it so weak?
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Yeah, it's really random. I feel like that would be that'd be a lot more used for sure.
Yeah.
All right, next one. This is unrelated to the format. This is just kind of for fun. Let's say you get to attend a TED Talk from a Pokemon professor about their research. If one doesn't come to mind, I have a list of all of them and their specialties. But do you have one that you would want to learn from? You got oak, elm, birch, rowan, juniper, all the way down to.
And if you need to know their specialties, we have those as well.
I got their specialties.
Yeah, I need their specialties.
Okay, so Professor Oak is just Pokemon and human relationships. Yeah. Elm is breeding. Professor Birch is habitats. Rowan is evolution and form changes. Juniper Gen 5 is origins. Sycamore is mega evolutions. Kukui is Pokemon moves. Magnolia is Dynamax. Sonia is the history of Galar. And then, Seda and Turo are the paradox phenomenon, both ancient and future.
Birch was habitat?
Birch is habitats, yeah.
Yeah, that 100%. Which, I mean, is fitting with Gen 3.
Gen
but,
3, yeah.
But it 100%. I mean,
makes sense.
Environmental stuff is always cool to me, so.
There you go.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
And I'm pretty sure I think his design, doesn't he have the Birkenstocks or something like that, where he's got the sandals?
Yeah, he has the sandals.
Yeah.
I mean, a couple of them, because also, the guy in Alola also has sandals.
Oh yeah, Kukui. That would make sense. Yeah,
I think could be wrong.
I just know Birch was rocking the like the shorts and sandals combo.
Yeah. Lab coat.
And he's got the chin strap beard too.
Yeah,
he's cool. There you go.
Go with it.
Nice. Well, right. So tell us more about your. So I know you mentioned, of course, no team preview, physical special split. Yeah. So I mean, it sounds like you've had some thoughts brewing on.
Yeah. So
those.
I'm curious what it would be like if there was no physical special split, but I that one I don't like as much to go into, because they really would like be screwing over so many mons with that. Like Weavile would never be useful, like ever. Like
that makes sense.
What's the point?
That makes sense. Yeah.
But the no team preview, I mean, I've always been a fan of it. I mean, yeah, it's another whole level of complexity in the game, and at this point with the power creep so high, it'd probably be bad. But I mean, I would like to just like try it out at some point. Just because like not knowing and like trying to plan around what you might see in the back is always it's like another puzzle in itself. It especially with draft, because you actually know the like X amount of mons that it could be.
Right. Yep.
But you don't know for sure. So it gives another layer to draft that like, okay, I made this mon specifically for these 3 mons, and if only one of those 3 mons shows up, I only need to use it for that mon, and then I can just either sack it or use it in other ways. But then you don't know if those mons are actually going to be there, right?
Yeah.
Until they actually show up, you could already have sacked your mon and then just get swept.
Then what do you do? Yeah.
It definitely gives like another layer of having to protect, like if you're thinking of like chess, you need to protect your pieces so much more, and and you have to keep your tools available, because otherwise, if they bring something, and also like kind of in that sphere as well, we don't know what moves or what sets they're running, and so it's like you have to almost like figure out what mon it is that's even coming, and then what tools they have, so if your tools are possible to be able to combat that.
Yeah, for sure.
That kind of thing just happened in one of our season's going right now. Had a kind of situation where you can have only one of two. You have 2 Ubers on your roster, but you can only bring one of them for the battle, like on your roster for the actual match. and this guy I played against, he had his 2 Ubers were Magearna and Palkia Origin form.
Okay.
And for usage, he had been running Magearna all season long, and Groudon's one of my Ubers. And I was like, okay, I think Groudon's overall the safest one here. And sure enough, go to the match team preview. He has the Palkia, and I'm like, okay, well, good thing I haven't answered the pack because that would have screwed. So, but the thing is, if there was no team preview, and then we go through the match, and then all of a
You're
sudden the
thinking
Palkia
that there's
pops
a
up,
Magearna. Yeah.
yeah, and then the Palkia pops up, and then it's like, okay, well, good thing like I knew going into the match that was gonna pop up at some point, and I could kind of maneuver my pieces around to be a little more advantageous for that. Whereas if it just popped up, I would have been like, well, that's probably gonna be an L. So
Yeah. Like.
It changes everything. I agree. That's fascinating.
It's really, I like it especially for the old gens because it makes those like 5-point mons that you would think are like whatever way more valuable because like those things can actually do stuff as long as like they don't know they're coming, right?
Yeah.
And like it's usually later in the game that you'll show it and then they'll be like, oh shoot, I got rid of everything that can actually handle this Metang, for example. Like Metang is underrated. That's another mon that I love. I mean, maybe it's the Metagross love, but I've used it to great success outside of Emerald Open.
I saw Trapinch in there too, right? Like Trapinch is in usage or something like that.
Yeah, but Trapinch that's more of a gimmick.
Okay,
like the arena trap.
Yeah, it's just for the arena trap, but it's too slow. I think if it still had access to Quick Claw, it would be usable. But no Quick Claw. Choice Band is your only option, and you have to bring it in on like a Blissey, like double or something. And it's too much of a gimmick.
It's too niche. Yeah.
I like personally going for things that are way more solid, I guess you could say.
Yeah, reliable.
Like I don't like throwing gimmicks at opponents just because
once they don't work
out.
Yeah, I mean gimmicks are usually they serve one purpose, and they might work out and you get them once, but then once it's been exposed, the gimmick is your gig's out pretty much.
Yeah, for sure.
So that makes sense. Cool.
Yeah,
I do really like that idea though. That sorry, you go.
I had another thought, but I lost it. I was talking about, or I was thinking about it earlier when I was talking, but now I lost it. But yeah, you can go on.
I was gonna say I think your team preview comment is just super interesting because it like you said it brings in that extra puzzle. I also kind of think like in your situation, Josh, where you're mentioning you prepped correctly, like you like even though like if we didn't have the team preview, you would have known that you prepped correctly, and it's like almost like an extra satisfaction that my gut is like in the right spot to know what to plan. And so it's like that would be kind of like one of those just extra talents that people can build like by like learning how to analyze a player and more not necessarily of the information in full, but also by the sets that they're playing and kind of be like, how do they play and how do I feel they're going to play against me? Like that's kind of an interesting aspect of that no preview as well.
Definitely. Sweet.
So, all right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, did you get that thought? If it's gone, it's okay. We can always.
Yeah, I think it's gone. I just want I want the like old gens draft communities to start like to develop, and like I love that Emerald Open's been like one of those outlets. There's another one that myself and Endless, well, really Endless is the main commissioner for it. Called DDT. It was a Gen 4 draft tour that we ran last year. I think it started in February or so. We got 96 people for that last year.
Oh, that's awesome.
We're hoping to get at least 128 this year. But yeah, just I want there to be like a full community of that. Not just like Gen 3, Gen 4, but also Gen 5. Maybe dip into Gen 2, 1, and 2, but I don't think there's enough mons for that.
It's tough.
To be realistic about it. But yeah, I guess it's semi shower thought, being that like there is a community out there and it's just not tapped into yet. And I mean, maybe I start like a Discord that just is like an old Gens draft hub or something, and just has the resources to get everything started and then support those other tours that already exist, right? I don't know. Hoping to do something like that maybe one day.
That's super cool.
That's cool.
I love that. I love the idea of just kind of, bringing back the classics. And like the thing is like, we've mentioned here is that kind of like you said, is that it's not like it's been gone, but it's just been growing. And like that's the thing that I think is super cool to know. And this is part of the reason why we do the podcast too, is that the Pokemon community. I mean, it's a series of games, but everyone plays it so differently, and so it's just so fun to see how people are finding their niche and they're just bringing it to life. And so I love that passion that you're kind of saying, about bringing in the old communities and trying to make it so that these can thrive. I love that.
Yeah. It'd be nice to see, because draft has always been like, it started in Gen 6 and that's where it is. Like that's starts in Gen 6 and goes until now.
Mm-hmm.
But there's enough stuff in the old gens that you can still make it possible, right?
100%. 100%.
So cool.
All right, kind of in getting to our wrapping up. Again, thanks so much for joining us. It was awesome to talk to you. We had a ton of fun. Just before we wrap up, is there anything you'd like to plug, tease for the people, and then any nuggets of wisdom, any life thoughts that you'd like to give anybody or give everybody?
Yeah. Plug. I mean, I don't know if I'm ever gonna start streaming again or start doing YouTube stuff again. Maybe one day. Jeronipuff on all platforms.
There you go.
But yeah, Emerald Open, that'll be going on next spring. DDT will be going on this upcoming winter. Definitely plug those two things, because want to get as many entrants as possible. Maybe get Emerald Open to 256.
Awesome.
Maybe get,
that'd be insane.
Maybe get, I mean, I think that's definitely possible with like the whole ADV revival stuff going on. Like there's definitely, and the fact that draft this summer like blew up like crazy. With all that, I think we definitely have the ability to bring big numbers to these tours that, I mean, they were popular and well-known players were playing in them, like Anti, the guy that I played in finals, he's like, I think 4 times Smogon like trophy winner. So like he's been on plenty of, like, great player.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, just to bring even more light to those communities that like are just starting, really. They're really just starting. Gen 4, Gen 3, and maybe someday Gen 5 big draft tour we could also make possible.
That'd be so cool.
Yeah. I think it's gonna come soon. It definitely will come soon.
Nice.
And then other plugs, not really. I mean, just if anyone wants to get into draft, there's plenty of opportunities out there. It's a huge community that's continuously growing right now. I mean, especially with things like Joey doing SPL, and with Smogon doing all this new stuff like DCL, and just all the seasonals that they're doing. You can sign up for, so those are all draft tours on Smogon. So it's like elimination style. But if you want to get into a league where it's like this many weeks and then there's playoffs depending on your seeding from those first couple of weeks, that's really easy to get into. You just have to go through Discords, like the bigger draft Discords, you can easily find them. Especially, I think even the Smogon one has now like you can find league like plugs in there.
Awesome.
And people are always looking for players, especially if you're active, then you'll get in. And just play all your games. Don't
don't ghost
like,
people.
Yeah, don't ghost people.
Yeah.
Don't, just be a good
An
player.
ethical trainer, yeah. There you go.
Yeah, ethical. There we go. That's the right word. And people will start liking you, and then you might get picked up for a team tour. Like team tours are like for some reason they're more highly regarded a lot of times. So, and DPL has been going on we pretty much stole the format from the actual SPL, like Smogon Premier League, and just making it into a draft format.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, if you get drafted onto a team for that, it's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of work because you're not just prepping for one game, you're prepping for as many games as that league has.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So like this week we have 3 SV slots, 2 Sword Shield slots, 1 USUM, 1 ORAS, 1 VGC, all draft.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So like, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of. That's why I said maybe not all of the games because I don't think I can prep for all of those. I don't really know much SV. I'm sticking to the old gens.
Dude, SV adds a lot too, man. With this, you gotta learn you almost gotta relearn some stuff too with SV.
Yeah. But other than that, that's really it for shout outs.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks again so much, man, for joining us. It was a pleasure.
Oh, one other thing.
Yeah.
Make sure that when you're playing competitive, it's to be competitive and not just to like, I don't know. You don't want to just like not care about the games because it kind of like I was talking about, you don't want to be an unethical trainer because like it really does not look good, and then it kind of ruins a lot of leagues that like can fall apart from people not showing up or whatever. So yeah.
I like it.
I like it.
Give it your all.
Be competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Well, in that case, it's been a pleasure, and we, I'm sure we'll talk again soon, and with more of the stuff you're doing. But at this point, everyone, we're gonna sign off. This is Logan, Josh, and Jeronis. We'll see you next time.
See you guys.
Have a good one.